This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. Our money and the stories it tells us coming up in just a bit. But first, a couple of quick things macro-wise up at the top here. Then we will get to our leads of the day. First of all, just to get you all ahead of this a little bit, you're going to be hearing a lot about the debt limit the next week or so, the statutory ceiling on how much money the federal government is allowed to borrow. As we mentioned more than a couple of times, I think the current waiver of that limit runs out at the end of this month. And so you are starting to hear Republicans say they are not going to have anything to do with raising that ceiling, which makes it news that the Congressional Budget Office said today, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, to be clear. The CBO said the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is going to be able to scrape together enough money to keep paying the bills till October or November. Remember, the lesson here is that the politics of this economy aren't always the whole story. Also, just real quick, stocks, honestly, whatever, just wanted to point out, as I do from time to time, the bond market yield on the benchmark U.S. 10-year bond firmly stuck near 1.3% the past week or so. So not all that worried about inflation, but maybe worried about growth and the Delta variant. That is still to come. Speaking of the pandemic, as we have been for, year and a half now, it is changing a bunch of things in this economy, some of them a lot, others not. In that latter category of things not changing as much as we thought, where people are choosing to live and work post-pandemic. We have seen, as we've told you, people leaving big, expensive cities on the coast, some, but there is new analysis out from Zillow that shows home buyers are increasingly just looking for places on the periphery of some of those cities. Marketplace's Megan McCarty-Carino gets us going.
For years before the pandemic, housing prices were growing fastest in areas closest to jobs, typically in dense urban centers. But the pandemic has flipped the trend, says Nancy Wu, an economist with Zillow.
The proximity to being close to downtown is being traded for longer commute times for greater affordability farther away.
Because many workers aren't going into the office as much and are looking for more space. Housing prices an hour or more from job centers grew the fastest in expensive metros over the last 2 years. Prices closer in, while still not exactly low, grew at the slowest rate and in some cases actually dropped.
We are seeing that a 10-minute commute in New York is now $73,000, almost $74,000 cheaper than it was in 2019.
Home buying is a long-term decision, she says, and that means hybrid and remote work are likely here to stay. And that could reshape cities, says Richard Florida, an urban planning professor.
Remote work is just the latest technology that stretches the boundaries of metropolitan areas.
Just like trains and cars did before. He says the rearrangement could make urban centers slightly more accessible to younger people or lower-income workers who have largely been priced out. But it's a troubling development for the environment, says Adi Tomer, a fellow at the Brookings Institution.
Using more space uses more resources. It's a fairly simple math calculation.
While hybrid workers further out may visit the office less frequently, he says they'll be more car-reliant, travel longer distances, and live in bigger houses that use more energy. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino for Marketplace.